Hi, I'm Dr. Eleanor Kennedy. I'm the Research Manager with the Diabetes Research and Wellness Foundation, and I'm here in Oxford for the 16th International Congress of the International Pancreas and Islet Cell Transplant Association meeting.
So type 1 diabetes, or sometimes termed insulin-dependent diabetes, is when the insulin-producing cells, or islets of Langerhans, which are the clusters of cells making insulin, have been destroyed by a process of the immune system attacking the patient's own islet cells. And this then causes them to have no production of insulin, and therefore they need replacement of insulin in some form or other.
What is islet cell transplantation?
So islet cell transplantation is a process or a treatment in which the islets which have been destroyed in the process of type 1 diabetes are replaced either by using a donor islet, or in the future we hope to be able to use different sources of islets. But essentially, rather than just giving insulin injections, we're actually replacing the cells that have been destroyed. So islet cell transplantation is a minimally invasive treatment in which we actually replace the islets of Langerhans, which are these little clusters of cells within the pancreas that have been destroyed in type 1 diabetes. So rather than then the patient having insulin injections, we're actually enabling them to have full normal production of the insulin that was no longer being produced after they developed the diabetes. Now this has a huge advantage because not only does it mean that we're not just giving a certain number of injections per day or a pump, we're actually replacing the insulin minute to minute in a response to the sugar levels. And in addition to that, we're also producing the other hormones that are produced, which we think are equally important to really get tight glucose control in the patient. And therefore there's big advantages because essentially we know that the tightness of control of diabetes in type 1 is linked to the prevention of the long-term complications. And so that's why we think it's a much more erudite way of truly reversing diabetes rather than just keeping it at bay.
What are the hopes and realities of people with type 1 diabetes who are going to undergo an islet cell transplant?
The ultimate aim of islet transplantation is to truly reverse diabetes and for the patient not to require insulin at all. But our expectations also have to be realistic, and at the moment, certainly in the UK, our reason for transplanting patients is once they had developed unawareness of their hypos, a very severe condition which a certain number of patients with type 1 after a certain number of years develop. And clearly that's life-threatening, and by replacing the islets, even if we do not get them off insulin, we can nearly always reverse that really debilitating side effect. The ultimate aim is that then for those people to also come off insulin, and we achieve that at the moment in about 58% of patients in the United Kingdom. Obviously with improvements, and that's improvements in techniques, in the number of cells we're using, and ultimately we aim to try and be able to transplant without the need for anti-rejection medication, then of course we can transplant a whole lot of different people that we're not transplanting now, and we hope the results as well will also be that much better. So there's the ultimate aim, and then the current realistic. And I think it's really important we put the perspective right rather than giving false expectations. But over the last decade, islet transplantation has improved so significantly that we now can offer it to a really big group of patients.
Could you talk a little bit about xenotransplantation and the potential it has for giving us more cells that are transplantable?
So one of the limitations of islet transplantation is the islet isolation or the extraction process. And that has two limitations. The actual process itself is fairly inefficient, but also there's a limitation of the number of human organ donors as there is for any type of transplant. Now the beauty about islet transplantation being a cell transplant is that we think that in the future we'll be able to use alternative sources of islets without requiring a cadaveric or a heart-beating donor. And there's two sources that we're looking at are stem cells and also animal islets, or so-called xenotransplantation. Now, of course, previously, we always used to use pig insulin, so it's not very far from where we've been already. But the aim then is that you could potentially have a renewable source of islets, a constant source of islets from an animal product, probably pigs is the most likely. And there's a lot of very good research and lots of very good advances in that area.
Can you explain a little bit about the DRWF-funded islet isolation laboratory here in Oxford, and also how that supports research in other parts of the country and other parts of the world?
DRWF have been absolutely key in the development of islet transplantation here in Oxford, in the United Kingdom, in a number of centres across Europe and further afield. Their ongoing support is absolutely critical, and we look forward to partnering with them for many years to come.
What are the benefits and what are the drawbacks of islet cell transplantation compared to whole pancreas transplantation?
Pancreas transplantation is a very major surgical procedure, often associated with surgical and infectious complications. Islet cell transplantation is a very safe, minimally invasive procedure, but both procedures are limited by the requirement for immunosuppressive medications necessary to prevent rejection of transplanted organs. This is the main risk and the main concern associated with transplantation. Another significant benefit of islet cell transplantation is that more widely available cell sources, such as cells from porcine donors or stem cell-derived islet cells, could be considered for transplantation, are actually being actively developed for use in transplantation. Those options are not available. There's no stem cell-derived pancreas that can be transplanted, or there's no pancreas xenotransplant that any one group is actively pursuing. So I think when it comes to implementing a therapy that is available for tens of thousands of people with diabetes, cell transplantation is the only way to go forward.
What is xenotransplantation? How important is it and how safe is it?
So in xenotransplantation, we can use young donors, completely healthy donors. We can use donors on an unlimited basis. We can time transplantation perfectly well because donors are available on demand. It should actually be safer using organs and islets from medical grade, pathogen-free porcine donors than using organs from human donors. It is believed that xeno islets from porcine donors are less susceptible to recurrent autoimmune disease. Autoimmunity caused type 1 diabetes in the first place, and the concern always has been that autoimmunity can persist for decades through autoimmune memory and can cause failure of transplanted islets. Porcine islets appear to be less susceptible to recurrent autoimmunity. We can now very precisely and very effectively change the genes of our porcine donors, and we can develop pigs with stealth islets that cannot be recognized by the immune system, or islets that are advantageous for different reasons. So I think your imagination is really at the limit. The technology is not the limit. And several groups are now working on genetically engineered porcine donors for use in xenotransplantation, including islet xenotransplantation. And it is a very fascinating and novel opportunity.
What is the future of beta cell replacement therapy?
The future of beta cell replacement therapy is bright. There are many opportunities, and I think these times are very exciting. Exciting not so much only for scientists, that is not important, but should be exciting for patients and their families who are burdened by diabetes. I feel there is considerable momentum. We showed proof of concept. We provided compelling evidence that islet transplantation can reverse diabetes and can help patients enjoy a life no longer restricted by constant fears and worries. We have shown we can restore insulin independence. We can achieve blood sugar control way beyond what has been possible with the most sophisticated diabetes technologies. And I think we must take advantage, we must engage new scientists, we must remove all the barriers that still exist, but we must capitalize on the real opportunities that now exist to make beta cell replacement routine and commonplace for patients with diabetes.